There were a lot of different battlegrounds there, and we would go out and we would find arrowheads and things like that,
Mhm.
and then we'd stumble across, get out in the Badlands and stumble across dinosaur bones. Yeah, my absolute favorite time of history to study is the Revolution, being forced in that position, take charge, and rising to the occasion.
Yeah.
And I think Dr. Calloway, I think she hit that very well.
Welcome to our spotlight author today, HSHarding. According to his bio, he's a veteran, teacher, and storyteller raised in the rugged Black Hills of South Dakota. He's also a high school educator with degrees in history, political science, and education, and lives in Minnesota with his wife, the youngest of 4 kids, and 3 usually loyal dogs. Operation Forgotten Spire is his first novel and is posted on Spotlight on Indie SFF. Listeners and readers can find HSHarding on X, Facebook, and his Linktree. I'll include those links in the description of this video. Now, do you prefer being called HS or do you want to go by your main name?
Yep, you can call me Heath.
Heath? Okay.
Yes.
We'll use that for the interview then. And I have to ask, since I have cats,
Yeah.
so why did you say you usually loyal dogs?
Well, it's a husky, and then we've got a Bernese and a Chihuahua.
Oh,
And
wow.
a husky you give her a room and she'll be in the next county before you know it. So,
I believe that. Just from knowing people with huskies. Yeah. Even the crosses.
yep, they love to run, and she'll take off running. So,
Oh, yeah. And I should tell you too, when I read this and saw that you grew up in the Black Hills, I have
mhm.
been there so many times in my life in both winter and summer. If anybody listening is curious, that is actually a wonderful place to visit. One of the many in the area that are well worth it at any time of the year. And there's also Mount Rushmore and the Crazy Horse Memorial, and just being in the Black Hills is beautiful. So I can see why you set your story there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. There's an energy there that you just stop and listen to it, you'll feel it.
Oh yeah, and there's so many caves too. I remember going into
Yeah,
caves in some of those vacations, and you learn a lot. I mean, just to get that experience down there.
yeah. It was a great place to be a history teacher out there.
Oh, I
So much
bet.
going on that between, like you said, the monuments there and just the entire history of the area was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you being a history teacher.
I taught history when I was out there in the hills. When I
Okay.
moved back here to Minnesota, I actually switched over. Now I teach English.
Oh, okay.
So
So how's that working out?
it's not as much fun as history, but it is still fun. I like working with the kids, and it gives me the chance to do some creative writing classes for them and have some fun there.
Oh, good. So did you have an interest in writing before you taught English, or did you that develop after you started teaching English?
I have written pretty much from the time I was in high school on. Never anything that I ever felt to publish, but I've always enjoyed writing stories and then crumpling them up and throwing them away.
Yeah,
Uh,
I kind of did the same thing, so I understand how that goes.
and then once computers got used, because my handwriting is atrocious and typewriters are awful. So
Yeah.
once we got to where word processors were better, then I started just putting them off into save files and letting them die there instead of the wastebasket. But yeah, I've always had an interest in writing. It's always been a fun, relaxing pastime.
Did you want to talk a little bit about Operation Forgotten Spire and tell us, how that came to be, what inspired that?
Yeah, Operation Forgotten Spire was intentionally. I've always wanted to write a fantasy in the Black Hills. Like we talked about, there's that energy there, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so many neat, just geographical places that you could just picture a fantasy environment in. And so I sat down and thought, it's like, okay, when we got Mount Rushmore, we've got Crazy Horse. What will people in the future think of it when they come to see these mountains here? We see us discovering mountains, in the Middle East or in India, and we immediately attribute these mountains to some sort of religious environment there. And So I wanted to write a story kind of surrounding that. What would people think if they came across these mountains with no context? And I thought it was going to be a fantasy, and the story decided that no, fantasy is not what it wanted to be. So it developed into this science fiction of discovering the discovering this mountain perfectly preserved and trying to piece together what it means, where it comes from.
And having to imagine what somebody in the future might possibly think of that, I suppose.
Right. Trying to imagine what they would come up with and the how wrong they are and how wrong we probably are and what we're finding. Um,
Yeah. I mean, without having direct firsthand experience, it's all speculation, just kind of forensics evidence, I suppose, just putting it all together.
yeah, we can take a good guess and we might be right, but that's really all it is, a educated guess, and that kind of makes it fun. Leaves it open to tell stories.
Yep. So, who are the characters in the story, and what is kind of some of their background, and how does it relate to your background then too? Did that have some influence on their development?
It did. I think a little bit of my background's in all the little bit in all the main characters. Dr. Vivian Calloway is the main character. It kind of goes into she's the one that's telling the story. She is in a hospital after having returned from this expedition. Um, Somehow 100 years after she left, although it felt to her only about a week. And so she's telling the story about the trip. She is a historian, much more comfortable in the archives than she is out in the field. When this mountain was discovered, she got sent largely because of that misunderstanding of what the mountain was. So she got sent as a researcher to try to figure it out. And so that history background there, and that's really kind of where my personality from studying history came into it. They are put on, of course, military escort. So that's where the military background comes from with me.
Yeah.
Where she's escorted by a Captain Dean and Blaine Hawk. Um, Blaine Hawk, by the way, is the main character of my second book, Zulu Company, that should be out in June if everything
Okay.
goes right. But they are the escort there, so they are handling kind of the military side of it. There is the other main character that hits that is going to be an important piece later, and that is Alex Ghost Horse. He is somebody that was trapped in the time bubble along with the mountain, and he provides that kind of explanation as to what all they got wrong. And so he is a very grounded individual. Uh, he represents kind of the people that I encountered, kind of a conglomerate of people that I knew from when I was out in Rapid City.
Okay. So time bubble. Okay. Um, when I was looking at the summary of this, I was like, I didn't see a time bubble in there.
Yes.
So you got to tell me more about that.
Um, yeah, kind of the background here, and I'm trying not to give too many spoilers away here, but
Right. Yep. Yeah.
um,
Don't give spoilers. But
this is kind of a post Yellowstone eruption. The continent is wiped out, and what society
ah,
was rebuilt after the kind of that dystopian society after the civilization rebuilt after Yellowstone erupts.
okay.
And part of out in the hills, they've got the Sanford Underground Lab. So there's a very scientific community there. Ellsworth Air Force Base. You've got the military combined with science there. And they created a device to kind of protect the area from a Yellowstone eruption that malfunctioned. And it kind of locked that region into a time stasis.
Okay. You mentioned that they discovered the mountain. So was the mountain buried then in the ash from the explosion, or was it even buried in something deeper? How did, if you don't mind, if it's not going to give a spoiler away,
Sure.
is there something a little more you can explain on that?
Yeah, the mountain didn't show up. It was presumed buried under the eruption. It wasn't there. The time bubble kind of it froze it, so it was just kind of a void spot, a blank spot. And so when the device that was creating the time bubble started to fail, as all machines do,
Mm-hmm.
it started to blink in and show up on the scans. And so that's how they discovered it. They just saw this mountain suddenly appear.
Okay. Okay. That gives me a little bit more of an idea and what makes this so intriguing to the characters. And so, how does Dr. Vivian Calloway get called into this?
She is, again, a historian at kind of the prominent university there. It is her and her boss, and his secretary is a linguist. They get called in to inspect this because of the nature of the mountain just kind of appearing. They wanted to send somebody there on site to look at it before, rather than try to bring anything back. And well, you can't really move a mountain anyway.
Right.
So she got called in to go inspect this as being part of that university.
So, did you have to do a lot of research on this, or you just, as far as the background on like what she might be doing as a historian going to investigate this, the kind of things they might do, or did you just kind of put that together from your experience studying history? How did that work out?
Yep, for the historical university side, I relied on my background there, is
Okay.
what we could do there. I do have friends that are in the university system and lean on them a bit.
Yeah.
Most of my research had to be on the science side, making sure that obviously a time bubble is not really there, but getting the mechanics of it so it was plausible, not completely made up. So
Yeah.
that was the tricky part with my history is mostly in the language arts and history, trying to come up with some
Okay.
hard science that was realistic.
Yeah.
That took a bit of research.
Well, I'm sure it did. Although you watch any science fiction series long enough, eventually they all do some sort of time thing in there.
Yeah,
I think Stargate SG-1 did a lot of time bubble stuff there.
yeah, that one did too.
So does that kind of stories in different series kind of give you some inspiration for doing something like that? Or did you
It
just
does. I
come
mean,
up with it on
every
your
time you're
own?
dealing with time or time, travel,
Yeah.
you are going to have those breaks in logic. It's just kind of unavoidable. And so watching those, you're trying to pick out, okay, which one is the worst one that I can avoid. So
You
and
like
so yeah,
time travel
you see
stories?
those like, yeah, here's the problem here.
Oh yeah. Yep. Do you like those time travel stories?
I do. I enjoy them. I grew up on Doctor Who,
Oh yeah. So
Land of
did
the
I.
Lost, and all those, and just kind of going to different places. So it is a source of fascination. It kind of makes it. At first, I thought, hey, this would be fun, and then I realized all the rules that go with it. It's like, gosh, it's a lot of work. So,
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, there's so many different ways of looking at it.
well, as I was writing, I keep thinking of watching like Big Bang Theory. It's like, okay, would Sheldon rip this apart?
I wonder what the people who write his character do to come up with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Is there anything, speaking of Sheldon, then, is there anything particular about your characters that would make them stand out? Just character wise as you wrote them.
With Vivian, I really kind of struggled with her being a historian. I really tried to get her to be initially kind of a go with the flow, not really knowing what's going on, then making that hard decision once they're halfway through the mission, being forced in that position to take charge and rising to the occasion.
Yeah.
And I think Dr. Calloway, I think she hit that very well. Once kind of the military operation broke down and she was where she had to do something, even though her experience was, sitting in an archive, she adapted to that and stepped up and became her own person at that point.
So that's kind of her character arc is that development.
Right.
Okay. And then what about the military guys? I mean, what did you do with them in the story? I mean, without giving away spoilers, obviously, but
Yep.
is there
And
some sort of special trait or event that defines them or that they have to go through in the story?
there are, I mean, they're a military unit and they are a tight knit special forces unit. That's not really released and revealed in this particular book. The next one
Okay.
gets into that a little bit more.
Okay.
Um, but they're a tight knit unit, and so they have to deal with losing people that they like, losing their friends on a mission that there's no way they could succeed in it. So it does look at some of their emotional toll of again dealing with loss of people that they're close to, and still having to put the rucksack on, and finish the mission. And in the process, they make some really bad decisions. So
Oh, well, that always makes the story more interesting too, because you got
yeah.
to give those characters that conflict. It seems to me like we're missing something. That there's some element. I don't want you to give away spoilers, but it's. I'm just curious more about what is is happening that they lose people in this. If there's some secret. I mean, yeah, I don't want you to give it away, but is there something that they discover that makes this so intriguing and dangerous in particular?
Um, Most of the danger for the mission itself comes from that time bubble itself. That was something that kind of developed late in the writing process. Is okay, we've got this bubble. What happens if you leave it? And so that is kind of where the danger came from, mostly environmental dangers, things like that. There are
Mhm.
people there that still live there, and they have
Oh,
people with wildly different technology, wildly different. So we got the reactions there, and with that, um, and so the for the military side, it is mostly environmental, with the exception of, like I said, Captain Dean. I hope I didn't give away a spoiler there, but
yeah.
he he comes across, you know, and having to interact with people, and it doesn't go so well. The bigger kind of danger is that we have an authoritarian government outside this bubble.
Oh,
Um, if you think along the lines of like a 1984 type government,
okay.
controlling information, um, the kids are tested and removed from their families and placed in foster homes at the age of 5 so they can be tailored to their specific job that they're going to be doing.
Okay.
And so through the process of going through this, and you've been to Mount Rushmore, and you've got the
Hmm.
constitutions everywhere. You've got all this history stuff about kind of the patriotic American side.
Okay.
And so she's discovering this information on kind of those founding ideals, and
So
seeing that,
you
oh,
mentioned,
this isn't how people live. So
right. So you mentioned that there's people living in the bubble.
yes,
Is this bubble speeding up time or is it slowing down time? How does it compare to the outside world?
it is slowed down. Um,
Okay.
and
So they're
so
still
again, she
living in the
spends,
past.
yeah, so she spends roughly a week in the bubble, which
Uh-huh.
translated to about 100 years outside the bubble.
Okay. Okay. Are they from like our era then in the bubble?
Right. So I said it and I just kind of randomly picked a date and time. So it's like 2032, I think is the date I put in there. It's been a
Okay.
while since I've read that first chapter. But so it'd be set basically in our current modern 21st century.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that'll be interesting. And then you said she's how many years in the future? 100?
It came it came to, yeah, about, I did the math. I think I had it. She lands there roughly 150 years in the future, and then she's there for,
The
what
equivalent
would
of
be
100 years in there.
for
Wow.
another 100. So all in all, it was about 250 years after
Wow.
Yellowstone erupts.
Well, that leaves a lot of room for speculating on what the world could be like.
Right.
What inspired you to write a story like this? I mean, other than the fact that you like the history and stuff, I mean, was there something else you wanted to explore in writing about this contrast between the two different types of worlds that she experiences?
Um, it's growing up through high school. I read, of course, Brave New World, 1984, Animal Farm, those type of philosophical dystopian
Hmm.
type books. And I pretended I was a philosopher and did not make that very well. But I really wanted to look at, because I enjoyed the contrast between Orwell and Huxley, how
Yeah,
they had two completely different visions. And so I was trying to hit an area where we kind of fit in between that.
I could see that happening with this. And this is just your first book and you have others planned. How many more do you think that you'll be writing?
Let's see, I have it mapped out, and we'll see if the map holds true. But I'm looking at 6 books for this particular world.
Okay.
And then each of them will have a companion novella with it.
Oh,
And
interesting
so Zulu
concept in doing
Zulu
that.
Company has a companion novella with it that's written already. I've kind of held off on the companion for Operation Forgotten Spire, just for a variety of reasons. It's kind of sitting there in my hold box. But if we're going to go all together, it'd be 6 books and then 6 novellas go with it.
Okay. So what is the feature of the companion novellas to go with those?
The companion novellas, for example, Shadow Veil here, it digs into one of the characters and looks at an area that I probably could have put it into the main novel, but it would have slowed everything down.
Okay.
Because there's a spot where she goes off to a different school, and so it follows that path there. So she pops up in another spot in the book, and it covers that gap in there. And
Okay.
so it just gives a little. They're meant to give a little bit different perspective on the events from a different character's viewpoint.
Yeah, that's a different way of doing it. I don't think I've ever heard of an author doing that before. That's one way of adding a little bit more depth to your world, I suppose. Like you said, without slowing down the action of the main novel.
Yep, and their companions don't have to read them. I encourage people to, but don't have to read them, and you still
Right?
understand the story. But it does add. It adds a lot more richness. It adds a lot more understanding of why characters make decisions that they decide to make.
Yeah. So I know some authors will give away like free writings, kind of something similar, but they're
Mhm.
usually just like short little stories just to kind of give a little bit more background on a character. And like
Yeah.
you said, because it doesn't quite fit in the action of the main novel or the book, whatever length it may be. But that's a different way of doing it is just doing the novel. A novella, you said actually. Um, that's actually quite a length too to have a
Yeah,
little bit of side information.
they're about 30,000 words. So
Yep.
the one for Operation Forgotten Spire that I'm kind of holding off on yet, that covers what happened with the Yellowstone erupting and kind of what happened in the time bubble before Vivian gets there.
Okay.
And so it gives that little bit of background on that. That it doesn't have to fit into the story, but it does enrich the story.
Right. So the story summarizes things well enough where this would just this expands on that.
Right.
What do you have written right now then? That you mentioned the one coming up in June, but do you have anything else currently written that you're planning to release down the road, or do you still have to write most of those?
Well, I have like I said, I have Zulu Company and Shadow Veil. They'll be coming out this summer.
Okay.
I do have the novella for Operation Forgotten Spire kind of sitting in my folder. Currently, I'm going through my developmental edits for the third full length novel.
Okay.
That that one kind of addresses with the parallel timeline, while Vivian is in the time bubble. What's going on in the world outside while she's stuck in there?
So does that one have new characters then? Are you keeping Vivian as the main character for each story?
Vivian is tied into she is the main character for the series. These next two actually, like I said, Zulu Company deals with Blaine Hawk, which is one of the military escorts, uh, and it deals with kind of how he got to where he went. The third book, it focuses on a character by the name of Ivy Karen, who is another one. She was kind of Blaine Hawk's love interest, and she's kind of leading the rebellion outside the bubble while Vivian's gone. And so when
Uh,
Vivian gets back, then they'll kind of those timelines will kind of match up again.
so there's some more intrigue going on in the outside world that she's missing out on.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's makes it a little more kind of a teaser
Yep.
to keep reading. Do you plan on having a different focus on different characters for each book then, or and then bringing it together in the end? How do you plan to organize your series?
Yep. It's almost like two tied together trilogies. So these
Okay.
first three is a lot of the background, the setup area.
Okay.
We're kind of introducing the conflict, the primary characters and their stories, how they got there. Then the last three books are intended to where those two timelines kind of converge, and we get into a dystopian retelling of the American Revolution. How closely it'll follow that, I don't know, but the intention is there.
Right. And using your history interest to tie in a little bit more there. That actually sounds like it's going to be a pretty neat overall story. What is your favorite place or period in history? Now, you
Uh,
mentioned some of this having to tie in with our modern day and the future, speculative future, and then kind of being its own American Revolution. Is this part of, one of your favorite periods in history, or is there another place in history that you actually have a deeper interest?
well, my absolute favorite time of history to study is the Revolution. George Washington Spire fascinates me. The kind of politics and the events that led up to and occurred during the Revolution. I really find that just a fascinating time period. If I needed to hop over to a secondary one, you can't argue with the 1920s.
So, do you plan on using some of that fascination with George Washington? As you said, it would be kind of a second American Revolution type thing going on. Are you incorporating some of that knowledge, or it just kind of happens to just be an interest in because of this
Nope,
type
I
of?
intend to use that with the as kind of a basis for things like the Culper spiring.
Okay.
Using that, I kind of tease that and feed that up here in books 2 and 3
Uh-huh.
with the espionage aspect of it. And so I intend to use some of those folk stories and things like that, uh,
Okay.
and kind of blend those in.
Do you have an interest in archaeology type stuff? To go with your history. You mentioned um,
It
some of
is a
the digging
hobbyist
stuff out.
interest.
Okay. Okay.
It's a hobbyist interest. Back like way back in the days, without aging myself too bad, um, we would have being in South Dakota with the Lakota. There were a lot of different battlegrounds there, and we would go out and we would find arrowheads and things like that.
Hmm.
And then we'd get out in the Badlands and stumble across dinosaur bones. And so it's always been a hobbyist interest. Nothing that I'd ever consider pursuing with any real vigor, but
Yeah.
it is fun to go out and find something that existed, well before I was ever thought of. It's kind of neat.
Right. And, again, it takes some knowledge of how to put the pieces together of the past to come up with something reasonably possible,
Right.
with the way things might have been. Since you're an educator, what do you actually teach? You said English. What is there a particular grade or grades? I'm
Yep.
just
I'm in
curious.
a small town, small school. So I've got
Okay.
seventh grade, ninth grade, and 10th grade,
Oh, what a combination.
which gives it a pretty broad range there. So I enjoy the ninth grade and 10th grade more than the middle school. It's just my personality there. Because there I can get a little bit more into the creative writing and start doing the stuff that's fun rather than okay, write this 5 paragraph essay and turn it in. I can
Yeah.
give them a little bit more flexibility and freedom to be creative.
Do you do a lot of creative writing projects with your kids, your students?
I I do. We have our curriculums that we have to follow. We got certain things that we have to hit. I do with my kids. I do what we call Workshop Wednesday, where
Oh.
we just do a writing workshop. They write what they want. We go in, we do peer reviews, and we critique it,
Hmm.
just to kind of foster their interest and energy into something that they're not writing because they have to. They're writing because they want to, and it has been successful. The kids like it. I've gotten some really good stories out of them. Especially you get to see we've got a lot of kids with a lot of different backgrounds. Some of their backgrounds are kind of rough, and they
Hmm.
get a chance to kind of put that out in the written word, and it's fun to see them. Fun to see them come out of the shell.
Does it you find that helps them then when they can write about their problems?
We do. We've got a few kids who have been in foster care or have divorces in the family or something like that, and to be able to put their thoughts down, kind of in a creative expression, it kind of lets them get that out. Unload that stress from them and go back to being a kid and being a student.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of students that get inspired to continue writing then?
I have a few. I have a few that are asking, "Hey, are there writing competitions I can get into and things like that?" So I've got a few, and of course, I've got a few because a lot of kids are different that say, "I don't want to write another word the rest of my life."
But it sounds like you're doing a good job inspiring the ones you can. Is your family interested in the books you write? That's always kind of a question for writers. that I
Yeah,
was thinking of.
they're all supportive and they're all kind of in it together. The
Yeah.
cover here actually was done by my son-in-law, so my daughter's husband.
Okay.
He's a local artist, and so he read through it. He asked if he could do the cover, if he could get something that matched what
Yeah.
he thought, and I said, okay, have at it.
He read your book. What did he think of that?
Yeah. He liked this. One of the people that have been out there as they're reading through it, they're like, yeah, I can see the spots you're talking about out here. We
Yeah.
know exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about that complex intersection by Mount Rushmore. I can picture it. And that's the thing that stuck out to him, stuck out to kind of everybody else that's been out there and read it or that's been out there and seen it. Is yep, you nailed the environment of the Black Hills. Got that right.
Oh, that's good to hear.
So
Yeah. So how many years did you spend in the Black Hills when you were younger?
I've been kind of back and forth. I grew up out there until I was 14.
Okay.
Then we came to Minnesota and finally got back there when I started teaching and we moved back here to Minnesota. There's always that piece of my heart that's in the hills. So
Yeah, it's such a pretty area. I can imagine why your heart would be there.
we actually lived like up in the hills. We were about 5 miles from
Oh,
Mount Rushmore is where we lived.
okay.
And we rarely got snow. Not of any significant amount. It was always nice. All I ever had was a light jacket. So
Oh,
come out here to
wow.
Minnesota, I had to buy a winter coat.
Okay, I guess I didn't know that about the Black Hills.
Yeah, the North Rapid City always gets a lot of snow. The northern hills get
Hmm.
a lot of snow. The central hills, they call it the banana belt, and it gets this temperature inversion to where it is just very, very moderate weather, moderate temperatures.
Have your students ever read your book?
No, they haven't. I try to just for professional reasons not push it. My grandpa read it. He just turned 100,
Oh, wow.
and he read it. He's like, I didn't know you could write like that. It's like, well,
That sounds like a good compliment. It's good to hear good things, but sometimes I wonder if the family is just going to go easy on you because they know you.
yep.
Do you have other ideas that you think you might develop for a different world?
Well, I still fully intend to write a fantasy story in the Black Hills, and I've got an outline for one. It's not for a YA fantasy for it, a portal fantasy.
Okay.
Kind of
It is
tied into
popular.
you mentioned all those caves out in the Black Hills, and
Yeah.
there's a there's kind of a rumor because none of those caves have been completely explored, and so there is a theory out there that all those caves are interconnected, and so kind of feeding off of that, I've had kind of a sketch of a portal fantasy kind of set out there where we have some kids that can explore those caves and get into other worlds through those caves in the hills. But
Yeah. And there's some beautiful caves out there too. If anybody listening ever gets a chance to go to the Black Hills, you have to take a tour of those caves. They are beautiful.
yeah, there's a lot of inspiration out there, and it's
Hmm.
um, being by Wind Cave there. We went to Wind Cave a lot, and
Oh, yeah.
they're telling the story about the kid that explored the first time with nothing but a little lantern. It's like, ooh, it's
I know.
braver than me.
I got a few final questions that, yeah, this
Okay.
would be good to ask. So, as writers, we both have our own process. Is there anything that you have learned now that you've written a few books and you're going through the editing stages and you've gone through, the cover arts stuff? Is there anything that you wish you'd known before you started that you've learned since then?
Really, like I said, I've written for high school, but I wish I had known before I got started the editing process of you don't have to write it perfect the first time. I think that's why a lot of my story ideas from before kind of got thrown. I was like, yeah, I wrote it, but yeah, this isn't good. Get rid
Oh,
of it. And so I wish I would have known then that hold on to it because even those bad ideas can be redeemed. Once you go back in and edit. Kind of picked that up. Went and did a novel sprint last November just to try the challenge.
was that the NaNoWriMo?
Nope, it was the Reedsy one.
Oh, I didn't even know they had that.
Yeah, Reedsy does one in November too, and a
Okay.
nice low stakes competition there.
Okay.
So I said, why not? I'm going to try something. So I actually wrote a sports romance for that sprint. No intention of ever publishing it, but just to go through the experience and what I learned from that, just of getting words on paper and then going back and revising it. I don't think I could have mimicked that without the challenge of the sprint.
Right.
The bones are solid. I've got my daughter-in-law that reads romance. She's like, you need to do this one. You need to finish this one. But um, whether I get the mood to go in and polish it or not is anybody's guess.
Would you do that again? That contest or that little
I
sprint?
I probably will. It was fun. It's a challenge, and it's something it's something to kind of be proud of. Hey, I got 50,000 words down. Even if never does get printed off and see paper, it's still it was still a fun challenge to complete.
Have you suggested them to try that?
I have.
Did any of them succeed?
No, none of them have. They are, and that's kind of the in the new age of people is the attention span's not there.
No.
And so when we give an assignment saying you've got a 1,500 word essay and it's the end of the world at that point.
I can about imagine. Now we hear all these things about kids nowadays because of devices and their attention span being down. Writing is a great way for students to learn patience, and then in the completion, you get that reward. I mean, it's very rewarding. I'm sure you feel that too when you get done with the story and it's just like, I did this.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, you have something
incredible.
in your hand that you can go with.
Right. This is what I
Um,
achieved. Look at all this. You got a book in your hand.
yep.
Like,
Well, that's what I did with my sophomores. I mentioned those workshop Wednesdays, and so I said, okay, we're going to do a year-long project. These workshop Wednesdays, over the course of the workshop, you're going to end up with a 10,000 word book. And so, is it going to be great? Probably not, but you're going to have something that you can say in your hand, saying, okay, I did this.
right. And that's great. I like to hear that because, you know, once you start completing a project, it gets easier to stick out the harder projects and complete those too. And
Yeah,
writing is always going to be a bit of a challenge, but man, it's so rewarding when you're done, especially when you've got a series and you're going, okay, what happens next? Oh, this is going
yeah,
to be so cool when it's done.
yeah. It's,
Because you get to write it out with your characters. Because I don't know how you write. I like to outline a little bit and then, I plot it out and then I leave a lot of room for pantsing.
yep, that's right. I'm mostly plotter. I get that skeleton there. I get that laid out for my writing process. And then, as you know, the characters get minds of their own and do something completely different. I have to redo it. But
Yep, I know that feeling. Yeah,
like
and
I said,
sometimes
Operation Forgotten Spire was supposed to be a fantasy, and it ended up into a sci-fi.
right. A lot of times, though, you actually get pleasantly surprised by what happens because when the character's actually taken over for themselves is really, I think it's just you running on autopilot where everything
Yeah,
just kind of flows and fits together, and your imagination is just taken off, and everything just is logical, and this is right for the characters, and you kind of just get in that zone, and it is the funnest writing.
it is, and the characters come out so much more natural because it's the characters making the decision, not you forcing something on them.
Right.
Characters get more
Exactly.
relatable. They're just more human.
Yeah. So do you find now, like for me, no, it's like for my characters, once they develop into their mindset, I don't know. I always have kind of an idea when I start,
Mhm.
of what I want that character to be. But over the course of a book, then, like you see this in TV series too. Like the first episode, they're trying to figure out who their characters are. And then
Yeah.
you see the character really or the actor really fitting into the character. And I find that happens when I'm writing characters too. Do you have that experience where you don't necessarily have them cemented in your mind, but they develop, not just develop for a character arc, but you find that especially going back and editing that you had a better idea later of who that character should have started out to be, and you kind of just do those little tweaks to, in their dialogue or in their descriptions or their actions that are more solid for who they should have been when they started.
Yeah, I find that too. I know what I'm trying to aim the character, and their personality just kind of comes out on its own. And so,
Right.
find out that the character at the end, not just like I said, not just the character arc, but their personality is more natural by the end. It's more
Right.
where they should be.
Yep. Do you find yourself ending up with character with some of your characters where you wish that you had those traits that maybe they're the better side of you in some ways?
I think most of the characters are kind of idealized versions of traits we either wish we had or wish we didn't have. So I do find that with the characters, like, if I was in those shoes, would I have done this? Maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't have had that courage. I wish I would have.
I think that's the neat thing about writing. I've thought about this in the past is we get so involved in our characters, and yes, they do become like real people to us, but I think part of it is because we're seeing their inside and we can't see the inside of real people. And so there's always part of us in there.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is, especially when we have characters that are very heroic, it's like we wish that we could be that, but we know that in those situations we probably wouldn't respond the way they do.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's just me rambling, but
Yes.
me thinking as a writer here.
Yes.
I have a great question to ask you here. And you're still pretty early in your writing career, but is there any advice that you would give to somebody else starting out specifically?
Somebody else starting out is, you can't edit a blank page. Get the idea down, written, write it out. Worst that's going to happen is you stick it in a drawer and nobody sees it. But get it out there, get it written. You just never know what's going to take shape. You could have the next bestseller out there floating in your head, and if you don't write it down, nobody's ever going to see it. So take that first step is kind of the biggest advice that I would give.
That's great advice. And I'm building on what we discussed earlier with the students. And that's true of anything. Just get it started and get it finished.
Yeah, the first step is the hardest. No matter what you're doing, the first step's always the hardest.
What is that? What is that old saying? The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, or with one step,
Yep.
or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's true. But it's important to at least try it. If you want
Yep.
to write a book, at least try it. And everybody makes the excuse. Everyone says they want to write a book, and very few people actually do. They kind of give up and make excuses. It's hard work, but it's
Yeah, and
very
that's what I
rewarding.
appreciate that's what I appreciate my wife, because there's been a few times where she's saying, "Oh, don't be so hard on yourself. You just get it down. You've done it. You've gone this far. Don't stop." So it's
That's
nice to have that
excellent.
support system.
Yeah, yeah. Not everybody has that, but you got to have that drive too, I
Yep.
guess. But it is nice to have the support. I know.
My wife likes to joke because when I first started writing this, it was kind of do it in secret on the side. I just didn't want to let it out. And she goes, "I thought you were avoiding me for a year. Turns out you're writing a book." So
I hope she didn't take that too hard.
no, she didn't. Once she found out what I'd done, then she's like, "Oh, okay, this is good." And she read it and enjoyed it, and she's frustrated with the ending because she wants to know more. So
It's a great place to leave any reader, is make
yes,
them waiting and wanting more. Now, the bad part is when you're writing a series, if you don't have it plotted properly, you're going to end up writing it into the ground, and then you just ruin
yeah,
it. And we've seen that happen how many times. So,
yeah. Get write yourself into a corner and not have a way out of it.
well, it's not just that. It's when you're just writing just to produce books in the series because people are demanding more, but you're kind of drying up,
Yeah,
and the action gets dull, the story
mhm,
gets dull, and you're running on fumes. Is how
yeah.
it goes. If there's just no more enthusiasm there, and you can usually see that in a book when a writer doesn't have that love for it.
You can. I appreciate it when they do stop. I saw an interview once with Eugene Levy when he was talking about Schitt's Creek
Oh yeah,
and how they just decided that's where the story had to end. The fans wanted more, everybody wanted more, but they said, you know what, this is where the story ends. And I can appreciate that. Even I can appreciate stopping where the story stops.
yep. And you have the plan for your series of what it's going to be, and that's great. And I think readers do appreciate that too. And we want readers to know that you're going to do everything in your power to fulfill that arc of your series. So anyway, thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good day.